In the modern world, large flying boats are a rare oddity, made mostly obsolete by other aviation developments. However, before and during World War II, flying boats were still a major factor in the aviation world and served a variety of military and civilian roles. The Blohm & Voss Company, which originally built ships, branched out into aircraft in the mid-1930s. Their focus, unsurprisingly, was on flying boats and seaplanes, with progressively larger designs being produced. Their crowning achievement was undoubtedly the Bv-238. This massive six-engined flying boat was the heaviest aircraft in the world at the time, and while it wasn't the absolute largest, it was in the top 3 depending on what dimensions you're looking at. The development of this enormous aircraft is the subject of significant controversy, since most of the documentation and records surrounding it were either destroyed or lost as the Second World War ended, but it's generally agreed upon that it suffered a rather protracted design phase, with work starting sometime in 1941 and only managing to get one prototype fully built before the end of the war. The Bv-238 was truly enormous for its day, featuring a long and narrow fuselage that was roughly the same size as a Type II U-boat from the mid-1930s. It used a high-mounted wing, which was standard for flying boats, and the wings also featured a passageway for engineers to service the engines mid-flight. It had a conventional tail along with 6 DB603 engines. The one completed prototype was used mostly for testing, but there were a number of designs at various stages of maturity that planned to use the plane as a troop transport, a maritime patrol bomber, a cargo hauler, a long-range recon plane, a strategic bomber, and even a land-based variant. The lone prototype was sunk by Allied aircraft in 1945 while moored up in a lake, and it was scrapped after the war. There are persistent rumors on the internet that this plane was intended for the German leadership to escape to Japan over the North Pole or whatever, but to be very clear, there isn't any reliable evidence to back up that theory. What we get in War Thunder is the Bv-238, the flying battle boat, which represents the proposed strategic bomber version of the plane I mentioned a minute ago. This is a premium long-range bomber in the German aviation tree at battle rating 3.7. As of making this review, the Bv-238 is the largest aircraft in War Thunder. This flying whale is defended by 5 gun turrets. It has 1 each in the nose and tail, 2 more out on the wings facing backwards, with all 4 of those using a pair of 13mm MG-131 machine guns, and another turret on top with a pair of 20mm MG-151s. Notably, the top turret's universal ammo belt is full of Minengeschoss ammo and does huge damage. This plane generally has adequate turret coverage in most directions, however it's still vulnerable from directly below and from below out to the sides. For offensive weapons, the Bv-238 has an optical bomb sight along with 1 loadout of 20 250-kilogram bombs. The bombs themselves are individually small, but the quantity of them combines into some pretty heavy punch. With good aim, it takes between 6 and 9 to clear out a strategic base, allowing this plane to reliably clear out 2 or 3 targets per sortie. The flight performance of the Bv-238 is pretty much exactly what you expect. It's not great. This is an enormous, heavy flying boat. The acceleration isn't very good, even though it has 6 engines. The rate of climb is painful, and the top speed is pretty slow. Now, the plane gets combat flaps, but otherwise it doesn't have any advanced features. It'll start falling apart at about 600 kilometers an hour, so you've got to be careful coming down from high altitude, like if you're going in to land and reload after bombing a base out. An odd quirk that I noticed is that if you bank this thing too far over, it has a tendency to slip into a turn, forcing a somewhat awkward recovery maneuver that's hard to describe. But again, this is a big, lumbery flying boat, so you should be sticking with gentle maneuvers whenever possible. you gotta go easy on this thing. Structurally, the Bv-238 can take serious punishment in the fuselage because it's mostly just empty space. You can fly around with a red or black fuselage and still be combat effective. Remember, the bomb bays are actually out in the wing roots. But the big weakness is the wings. Even just a bit of sustained fire from low-caliber machine guns can take the wings off this plane without a whole lot of trouble, so be careful about that. In terms of taking this thing out in live matches, I want to stress something up front here. The footage I included in this review is, as always, trying to show you, a variety of different situations and tactics, and not just repeating ideal gameplay over and over. With this plane in particular, that's probably a good thing, because ideal gameplay would be super boring to watch. In short, trying to climb as best you can, and just take out strategic bases. In realistic battles, you get an air spawn, obviously, and enough bombs to take out 2 or 3 bases in one pass, really just depending on how accurate your drops are. Same deal in arcade battles, but the ability to reload in the air means that you can win the match by yourself if nobody climbs up to deal with you. You always want to be looking for enemy fighters, and when you see them, do what you can to position yourself so that they're approaching you from behind and or above, so that you can put your maximum defensive firepower on them when they get within range. Patience will be a virtue, as sometimes the fighters will chase you off your targets, and you have to turn back around after you deal with them, but it's worth it. Just remember though, if the other guy knows what he's doing, this plane isn't too difficult to take down, so you should be expecting to get shot down quite a bit through no fault of your own. In terms of close air support, well, you don't want your air support to be very close. Enemy SPAA are a major threat, as they can often do a hell of a lot more damage than enemy fighters with a couple machine guns. And remember that this plane is an enormous target, so if you fly too low, you're just begging to get your wings blown off. Still, the huge bomb load is fun, and you can carpet bomb huge chunks of the map. This really isn't a precision bomber type of plane out over a ground battle, but it's still pretty fun and very satisfying when you actually get kills with high altitude bombing. Visually, this plane is a huge 6-engined whale of a flying boat. If you like flying boats, this one isn't too bad, but in my opinion, the wings look a little odd for a plane of this size. It's kinda hard to articulate, but either way, only one paint job, so I hope you like green. Landing is basically the same as other flying boats in War Thunder. On land maps, you're forced to belly land, so you just slow down and set down. You can drop floats and flaps at about 250 kilometers an hour. Try to set down under 200 kilometers an hour if possible. The cockpit is an absolutely awful low-poly placeholder with poor visibility and horrible internal details. This one was pretty lame to fly in VR. To close out on the Bv-238. This plane carries a huge bomb load for its BR. Its defensive guns can be pretty effective. It can land on water. Its fuselage can absorb enormous amounts of damage. And it gets premium bonuses. However, it's the largest aircraft in the game as of this review and makes for a huge target. The flight performance is just awful, and it has significant gun turret blind spots below the plane. The final verdict on the Bv-238 is that it's kind of a meme vehicle, but it can actually be a very effective strategic bomber out in air battles. If you're looking for a low-tier premium German bomber, don't pass this one over just because it's a big flying boat. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one.